Hello and welcome. If you are watching this on YouTube, welcome back to my channel. If you are listening on my podcast, welcome back to the Shamanic Womb Oracle podcast. It is great to have you here. If you are new here, my name is Shannon. I am a shamanic practitioner. I specialize in womb shamanic work and soul healing work. And I use this space to talk about topics that are really present in the field that I am connected into, and like the community or the soul group, soul fractal that I'm connected into, to answer questions that I get, sometimes to share my life stories. If there's, something in there, some medicine in there I want to share with the collective. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching or listening. And let's get into what I'm going to talk about today, which is this question that I think a lot of us have thought, have wondered and asked. I know I've been asked this. So the question is, do I have to do work to stay connected to my spiritual growth, to stay connected to my spiritual self? After I have reached a certain point in the work that I've been doing, like if I've been on a spiritual healing journey, an emotional healing journey, a soul healing journey, womb healing journey, do I have to do work even after I've finished my kind of intensive period? Because often when we're called into this kind of work, we are called into a bit of an intensive period where we're working deeply with the energy, deeply with ourselves, and then we kind of come into a place where we get to like set it down a little bit and breathe, right? And we don't have to work so intensely. So do I have to continue working so intensely when I get to a point, or do I have to continue doing work to stay where I'm at with my spiritual connection, even after I stop working so intensely? Wow, sorry, just kind of word salad at that. But I think this is such an important question to talk about. This is such an important topic to talk about because the answer is both yes and no. I know, isn't that great? Isn't that great when it's like, I don't have an exact answer for you. It's not an easy, clear cut yes, clear cut no. No, the answer is both. Sorry. The purpose of an intensive period of growth and work and soul work, spiritual work, womb work, whatever it may be, all those things. If you're in my world, we're doing all those things, right? The purpose of that intensive period is to enact real change, is to enact real change and peace in your body, in your system, in your soul, in your energy field. So we do not need to be working intensely our whole lives. Like that's just no, I don't want anyone ever doing that. I don't do that. I probably work a little more intensely than the average person throughout my life. And that's because I do this work full time, right? And I'm guiding a lot of other people through this work. So I'd say I probably spend a little bit more time intensely connected into my soul work than the average person needs to. However, even I go through periods of really intense soul work and then a little less and then really intense. And it's like a roller coaster, up and down, up and down. So yeah, the purpose of a really intensive period is to enact real change and peace and bring peace into your body, to bring peace into your system. Sorry, that was a crystal. So when we get to the point where we're done with intensive work, then that's where the no comes in, right? You don't need to keep working as intensely in order to just maintain where you're at. You don't need to do the same amount of work that you were asked to do. Like if I can only speak about this, or I can most easily speak about this from the vantage point, the perspective of how I work and how I work with clients. When I'm working intensely with somebody one-on-one or in a small group container, I'm giving you homework. I'm asking you to do things. I have a lot of resources. I have a whole like online platform of full of resources that I give you access to. For example, when we're working one-on-one or in an apprenticeship or in specific group programs. And I'm giving you homework to do with the resources you have, with the things I've been teaching you, with the work we've been doing. I'm giving you homework of some kind. And so when we're in that intense period of work, whether it's 3 months or 6 months or a year or however long it might be, because everyone's different, everyone's soul journey is different, what everyone's carrying is different. So like one person might need 3 months of intensive work, another person might need a couple of years of intensive work, and that doesn't say anything at all bad or good about one or the other. It's literally just about, what does your soul need? What have your life experiences brought forward for you? What kind of time, what kind of pacing does your soul and your energy need? Like it's not a judgment. It's just like some people need different times, different time lengths. I've spent years in intensive soul work, like 4 or 5 years in intensive soul work. So when we get to the point where we're done working as intensively, we do want to reach a status quo. We want to reach a place where you can maintain what you're doing, and you can maintain how you're feeling. And the goal is that we have cleared patterns, and we have done soul retrievals, and we have brought wholeness into the soul, and brought you into embodiment in your being, so that it's, a lot of this is just innate. It's just in you. It's just who you are. That doesn't mean that you just stop. That's where I see people feel like they lose it a little bit after they've done intensive work, is if they just stop. And I'm always really clear, like, don't just stop. Like there are practices, like you need to hold these practices with you, even when we're done working intensely, because part of staying embodied, for example, embodiment's a huge aspect of the work I do, huge point, I would say, in soul healing work, and womb work, especially. I mean, we can't work with the womb if we're not embodied in the womb. We need to get to know her and be connected into her as a physical aspect of our body, right? A big part of embodiment, of that kind of embodiment, is being connected to your body. If you do intensive work getting connected into your body, you might spend a few hours a week with that embodiment when you're in that intensive space, right? But then if you stop, and you stop for 6 months and you do nothing to connect to your body, you don't ground, you don't do any kind of practices, you don't do anything to stay connected into your embodiment, we live in a world that wants you dissociated, right? It is a decision and a concentrated effort, meaning that you have to make steps. You have to continue doing the steps to stay out of the matrix of disembodiment. We live in a world that wants us disassociated. So if we stop embodying ourselves, the easiest thing for us to do is to disassociate again, right? So there are things that we do in shamanic healing where, like I've already said, I know I'm repeating myself in some places, but it all just weaves together. So there are places where we are closing circles, we are closing cycles, we are closing loops, we are closing patterns, we are bringing soul back deeper into body, we are embodying you deeper into your experience of self. And those things are permanent. Like those things that we're doing, we are integrating. I am making sure that you are integrated in that as much as I can, before I say, yeah, we're great, you're integrated, right? And integration also happens in layers. I've had soul retrievals I did on myself that integrated in 3 weeks, one layer, and then 3 years later, I get pulled back to those soul pieces. And I'm like, oh my God, oh, okay, that integrated in a deeper way. Like, wow, okay, happens in layers, right? So there are things that we do that are big, permanent, more permanent kind of energies. Like we've shifted the system, we've shifted the timeline you're on, we've shifted the energy that you're living in. But we still live in this human 3D world. And so, yes, this is where yes comes in. Yes, you have to stay connected to your spiritual practices, to your embodiment practices, even when you're not doing the work as intensely, even when you've graduated, as it were, out of intensive work. You've still got to do stuff. You still got to go breathe with the earth, go hug a tree, and connect and ground yourself into the earth, and let yourself feel that you are part of the living, breathing system of this earth, right? You still got to do stuff like that. You still got to connect in and feel your emotions and notice the stories that come up in your body, or in your mind when they come up, and say, hey, I'm listening. And if this isn't a story I want, hey, I know how to help you release. I'm not going to let this stay, right? I'm not going to take this old story that doesn't feel good as truth. I'm going to listen to it, and then I'm going to do some work to pull it out, right? That's a lifelong process. It doesn't matter how intensive work we do. And this is true for whether you're working with me or anyone else. It does not matter how intensive of work you do. We live in a world, again, a 3D world full of conditioning, full of other humans who are not doing this kind of work. We live connected into lineage lines that have layers and layers and layers of things that they maybe never got to work through, that are passed down, and maybe you're the person in your lineage line who's working through it. Stories are going to come up throughout our life. Things that we don't want to hold on to are going to come up throughout our life. We will have to at times connect back into some of those old, like to some of the practices more intensely and go, okay, this is an old story. This is an old belief. This is an old pattern. This is an old system. I'm being called into awareness of this. So I'm going to do some work to clear this out. Right. That's just truth. Like, there are going to be times I find in my experience, I very, very frequently work with clients where we do some intensive work together for however long, right? 3 months, 6 months, a year. And then they go off into a period of integration, recalibration, living, like embodying even deeper just in their daily life, the work we've done. And then they hit another place where they're like, oh, it might be a year later, it might be 2 years later. They hit a place where they're like, oh, this thing is coming up. Can we do some work on this? They come back and we do some work. And often it's not as long. It's not as longer in depth because we already did long in depth work, but we come back around and we go back into another layer of things because it's life, because that's life, because that's life, because that is how this plane, this existence works. And once you're awake to how good and peaceful it feels to not carry around old stories and patterns and energies, and to be embodied and to be connected into your soul, you don't not want that, right? When something comes in that's like kind of pulls you out of that feeling, of that energy, you want to work with whatever is pulling you out so that you can come back into the good feeling, because no one really wants to be disembodied. No one really wants to be not at peace. Once you've felt it, once you've felt the feeling of good, like peace, wholeness, I can take a deep breath, that kind of energy in your body, integration, you don't not want that. Which is perhaps the dangerous circle or cycle of healing work, is that once you get started, it's really hard to step off of it. That doesn't mean you're in it for your whole life. Doesn't mean you're intensely working your whole life, right? Let me go back to what I said at the beginning. It does not mean you need to be intensely working your whole life. You shouldn't be. You shouldn't be. You should be out enjoying. You should be out living. It does mean that every single human goes through things and has time periods of life that are, easy, and time periods that are kind of hard or really hard. And when you know what it feels like to feel good in your body and to not be carrying around trauma or pain or whatever it is, something else comes up, you want to work through it. You don't want to hold it, because that's what humans do. We hold the pain, we feel the pain, we hold it. We're like, oh God, this feels icky. I don't really want this. But I'm really scared to go deeper into what this is, so I'm not going to. And then we'll hold on to it for years, decades sometimes, before we finally decide to look back at it. But once you've created the habit of looking at it, when things happen, you don't generally want to just stuff it down again. So, all right. So that's my answer. Yes and no. Do we have to stay connected do we have to do work to stay connected to our spiritual growth? Yes and no. No, you don't need to work deeply, intensively forever. Yes, you have to do work to stay connected. Let me go back to something I know I mentioned probably a few minutes ago at this point, which is where the one place that I see people I guess kind of disconnect, fall off a little bit. I'm using fall off very, very, very loosely. After they've done a lot of work, is if they then don't continue their practices. And I do actually often advise clients to take a break for a few weeks after we have done our intensive work. Like whenever we close the container, I do often advise, hey, take 2-3 weeks where you don't need to be meditating every day or doing journey work or whatever, whatever is being worked on. You don't need to be, if you're meditating, just make it like, just ground, right? Don't do any kind of like searching or trying to have like big conversations or connections with spirit. Like just chill, take chill pill on it for like 2-3 weeks. And then you come back to it. And it's when we don't come back to it that it's like working out, right? Your muscles, if you stop working out for a couple weeks, you're gonna lose a little bit of strength, right? But it's not a terrible amount. You are gonna get back to it, and you will rebuild that muscle pretty fast. If you stop working out for 6 months, you go back to the gym or to your running or like whatever your exercise is, you're gonna feel it, right? 6 months, you're gonna feel it. It's our spiritual connection, our embodiment, our connection to womb, to soul, to self, to wholeness. They're muscles. And you know what? I could go on a whole rant about this and be like, well, it shouldn't have to be a muscle. We should be able to just live connected in. And yeah, that would be ideal. That would be ideal, right? If we lived in a world that was more ideal, none of what I'm saying right now would necessarily be anywhere near as important. And that can be one of the ideals that we are working towards in our spiritual explorations and sharings and journeys, is a world where we don't have to work to stay connected, right? That's so valid. That would be amazing. I think that's why people, myself in the past included, get so like spiritual people hear about Lemuria and Atlantis and those like past civilizations, especially Lemuria, where it's said to have been like this idyllic, like ideal kind of civilization where we just lived, we just were the people who lived, the beings that lived there were just, they just got to be, like they didn't have to do. And then like it's such an enticing idea, because there's some part of us that knows like that would be our highest expression of life, is to be able to live in connection with earth and spirit, and to be, and not have to like, go do all the crazy things that are part of our 3D life. Yeah, that could be really nice. But also we live right now where we are at this time. We are here. We're in a world where it is not innate or taught, or we are not conditioned to stay connected in. Like I said at the beginning of this, it is a lot easier to dissociate than to stay embodied. And I have felt this in the years since I started, sharing my work and supporting others. I have noticed, and even in the years since I started, even before I started sharing and working with others, when I was just working with myself and going through my awakenings and all the things, and healing eras, I guess. There have been many, but I noticed that it was easy to go through periods of deep embodiment and then like get distracted and kind of stop doing the stuff and then get disembodied again. I can do that right now. Like I could take 3 weeks off of all of my practices and I would come back and I would be less embodied. If I took 3 weeks off, I'm paying attention to myself. And I'm not talking about paying attention and embodiment in like an obsessive way, because it's not. I definitely am not obsessive. And how I connect into this. I could definitely say in the past, probably I was. And I never want, I don't advocate for that. I don't teach that. I teach very balanced, like, I say to my clients when we're working on grounding and like that first layer of embodiment, just getting into the body, do it for 2 minutes a day, right? Everyone has 2 minutes. I don't care how busy you are, you have 2 minutes to get into your body. You're not probably going to get fully into your body in 2 minutes if you're not used to being in your body, but you have 2 minutes to get yourself a little more into your body. We all have 2 minutes. I spend 2 minutes all the time looking at my phone. I don't need to. I know every single one of us does. We all have 2 minutes, no matter how busy you are. It could be 2 minutes while you're in the shower, right? It could be 2 minutes while you're sitting in your car, like waiting for, I don't know, like school pickup or going through a drive-through or whatever it might be, where you're like not driving. Obviously, don't do this at a stoplight, obviously. Like car and park and you're like waiting on something, right? Okay, you could ground and get into your body for 2 minutes. You also don't have to close your eyes to get into your body. It can be like okay, I'm just breathing and I'm my eyes are open and I'm aware of the world around me, but I'm just pulling my energy into my body. And I'm going to stay really aware of my body and where I am and how my breath feels, how my energy feels, just being here for 2 minutes. We all have that time somewhere, somehow, some way, right? So that's the kind of work that, like, we stop doing that, we're going to start to feel disconnected again. No matter how much work you've done, no matter how much healing you've done, you do get to put it to a side, but it does not have to be the focus of your life. Like often it is, or one of the big focuses when you're in an intensive healing period, but we do want to be aware of not fully disconnecting and putting away totally to the side all of the, all of the work that we've done, all of our practices. Yeah. But I do absolutely recommend after intensive work that you put aside the intensive practices for a little bit, that you like I said a few minutes ago, you just ground. So I tell my clients all the time, okay, we're done with intensive work. Take a few weeks off of anything intensive, ground, just connecting with your body, do some body work, do some gentle, like, connection in, like with your belly. I often have people connect in and just kind of gently hold the belly and connect into digestion, for example, digesting the energy. Do that kind of work, right? You don't have to go all in crazy intensive for a few weeks, and then find your balance between doing very little and doing intensive work. What's your balance, right? I don't think we ever fully lose our connection to spirit, to our spirit growth, spiritual growth, but we can definitely disconnect from it. So ideally, we don't want to. Ideally, if we've done all this work to stay connected to spirit, to connect into our spiritual growth, we don't want to disconnect from that. And even if we have, that doesn't mean you can't come back to your connection. It's like a muscle. It's just there. You just have to start working at it again. Getting yourself into your body, getting yourself into your energy field, listening to the world around you, connecting to the world around you. You just have to get back to it, right? Just use the muscle again. It's there. And so, yeah, that is my answer. Do we have to stay connected? Do we have to work to stay connected? Some things are innate, or some things are, some things are just, when we do the work, we've done the work, you don't have to go back to it, right? I mean, that's the whole point of doing soul retrieval work or clearing like old stories or beliefs or patterns. Like once it's cleared, ideally you don't need to go back to it. Like that's what we're doing. We're making sure it's cleared from the root, so you don't have to keep going back to it. But things like staying connected to the body, staying connected to spirit, staying connected to what's greater and beyond the 3D life that we live in, that stuff does need our attention. It does need our attention. We do have to do some work to stay connected to it long term. Otherwise, it's really, really easy to connect back into like the rat race of the world, right? And disconnect and disembody and disassociate. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear. And let me know if you have other questions. I'd love to hear if there are like, questions that you'd love me to do a little episode about and talk about. Okay. Thank you as always for joining me.